Sup guys, this is part 2 of 3-part series, and today we're going to talk about the iceberg, the mystery of the hidden iceberg. Yesterday we talked about Titanic, talked about the ship, why it sunk, talked about the iceberg, and we said why the ship sunk. And if you watched yesterday's live, put in the comments you were here for part 1, so then I know, because it helps. Hi Chris, welcome. Thanks for joining, bro. Thanks for joining everyone who did join. This is part 2 of 3-part series. So yesterday I said that the Titanic, the ship, my awful drawing, basically it missed the iceberg, but it sunk because it hit the bottom of the iceberg, basically. And today in this live, you're going to find out why this iceberg applies to you. So, thanks for joining everybody who does. This is part 2. Boom. Part 2 of 3-part series. That's an iceberg, by the way. It doesn't look like an iceberg, but it's an iceberg, trust me. Welcome, new people. By the way, if you've not watched the first part, because this is 3 parts, you need to watch the first part. And I'm going to put it, whoever watches a replay, I'm going to put it in the top of the video, like here somewhere. Or here, whatever, I don't know. But basically, yeah. So, there's 3 parts to the iceberg, and the iceberg is your mind. The mind is split up in 3 different paths. 3 different parts, sorry. And the main part you will understand is the part that you don't see, and it's called the unconscious. The unconscious. I'm going to call it you. The second part is called the preconscious, which is stuff that you can think in your mind and you can retrieve that information when you want to. But when you're thinking right now, like for example, you don't think every single second about your phone number, right? You don't think about your phone number, but if somebody talks about wanting to, get your contact details, you straight away remember what? Your phone number. So that's the preconscious. And then the top bit, which is the tip of the iceberg, which is only 1/7, or some people say 10% of the iceberg, is the conscious level. So the CPU, a bit like a computer, CPU. So conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, or some people say like subconscious. So if you're following this so far, hit the like button, helps a lot. So somebody said that they're going to give me 10k if I shout them out. I do not believe that, so I'm not going to shout you out. And even if it was true, I don't care. Because we're doing this live, and this live is very important. So if you're just joining on today, this is part 2. If you've not watched part 1, watch it. CPU, so conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, or subconscious. And who created this theory? Believe it or not, the guy who made it popular did not create this theory. It's a guy called Sigmund Freud, which a lot of people know. Is it F-R-E? Freud. F-R Freud. I think it's EU. I think it's EUD. But this guy called Sigmund Freud worked out this theory. I made it popular. So that's a lesson for you guys. You don't need to create a theory, but if you make it popular, you'll be the one who will be talked about in 100 years' time. That's funny. So the conscious is stuff that you think about on a daily basis. So it's your conscious, and the conscious, people think that everybody is only made of the conscious mind. Everybody thinks about the conscious and that's it, but it's not true. The truth is that's only like 10%, so that's only a little part of it. And on the conscious side, this is where awareness is. So if you are aware of something, really aware, you're using your conscious. So we'll put awareness, aware, and that awareness increases as you go up. And later on in this live, you'll find out why that's important. And I just want to thank people who have joined. This is so amazing. You should be a psychology teacher. Maybe one day, who knows? Well, this is just my kind of like practice, isn't it? So yeah, CPU, conscious, which is very aware, pre-conscious. Pre-conscious is an interesting one because you're not aware, but the thoughts and feelings can be brought to consciousness, if that makes sense. So like I said before, the telephone number, that's a good example. And in the unconscious, so I'm gonna put like because in the UK we use +44, so I'm gonna put +44 to symbolize telephone number. So the telephone number's there. So that's your pre-conscious, and that in terms of the iceberg. So this is, remember, this is an iceberg. The pre-conscious is what you can see, but it's in the water. So like, you can only see a certain amount of the iceberg when it's in the water. That bit you see all the time. So when the Titanic was going through the water, for example, in our situation, they saw the tip of the iceberg. So they saw the conscious, but they didn't see the pre-conscious and they didn't see the unconscious. So we'll put like here, that means like almost equal to 6/7. And that one is 1/7. So most of it is underwater. And the interesting part is, most of your problems or things that you do, behavior patterns, stuff that you do without even thinking, it's all coming from the unconscious. Obviously, it comes out as the conscious, but there's a deeper meaning behind it, and I'll tell you later by what I mean. But the unconscious, this one here, it's all about. I'm gonna write in different in a different color. But the unconscious, sorry, is basically to do with your past experiences. So past experiences. So that's why it's so important to talk to somebody. You know, like counseling and stuff like that. Do you know why it's so important? Because essentially what happens is your past experiences create an unconscious, sort of like unconscious reasoning in a sense. So it makes it so much easier in life when you talk to somebody about your problems, but somebody you trust, because it releases the past experiences. And it's hard to do that, but it helps you a lot, because what happens is this side, this part of the iceberg, which is unawareness, so you're not aware, so unconscious, unaware, becomes aware. So like when you speak to somebody about your past trauma and stuff like that, and you get things off your chest, you know what ends up happening? You go from unaware to aware. And I'll be honest with you, the reason why you can't tell everybody everything, or you shouldn't tell everybody everything, is because if you explain to everybody your life story, that's kind of dangerous, because then you're aware of things that you shouldn't be aware of. But I'm going to tell you this, it is still important to speak out, you know, what's in your mind, what's in your heart. That's why religion is important. That's why counseling is important, stuff like that. So it's to do with this iceberg. And basically, because our brain works on 10%, as I said in my previous live in part 1, if you've not watched it, watch it. Because I said it works at 10%, that's to do with this. So your unconscious is the 90%. And if our brains worked at 100% level, you would literally implode, because you can't handle it. That would be like seeing the whole spiritual world, if there is one, if you do believe in that. So if you did believe in the spiritual world, for example, and you saw 100% of it, you'd be operating on the whole iceberg. But the problem is, we as humans are evil in nature to a certain degree, so we don't use the unconscious level as much as we should. So with that being said, this is my conclusion. Your unconscious is very important, but you cannot use it to the full extent. But the more you use it in a wise way, where you know, you speak your heart, you tell people about your situation, then you know it'll be easier for you to live. So the people that say, like, for example, depression is not real, that's 100% wrong, and it's to do with this iceberg basically. And yeah, you'll get to know that throughout this live and through the next lives basically. So past experiences is what, and just to say, this whole study is called psychoanalysis, and it's very important in current psychology, like current studies in psychology. And it's so important because they use it, well, it's used in art and literature and stuff like that. So this kind of thing, it was created in the 19th century, but it's so important because it was created in the 19th century. That was the breakthrough of psychology. So that was the first time, you know, that was the first time people started doing experiments with psychology. So I'm going to see if anybody wrote any comments. Yeah, so this is basically the theory of psychoanalysis, and it's the theory of behavior. So the reason why people behave in certain ways is to do with that. So past experiences, so a lot of the experiences you experience, you don't know that it happened, but it's somewhere in your brain. It's stored really deep in your brain. So those thoughts and memories, you don't know they exist, but they do exist, and that's because our brain is working on 10%. That's basically what this whole thing's about. And another thing I wanted to mention is this. The reason why depression is really important, and it's a really iffy topic, is because the more you take out stuff from past experiences and your subconscious into your conscious, that could potentially make you depressed. So therefore, you know what we do as humans, we stop talking about it. And you know what that's called? That's called repression. So there's depression and there's repression. Repression is when you pressing, so you're stopping the unconscious going to the conscious, and that's where depression occurs. But it's important. It's important. So in a sense, if we didn't, if everybody on the earth was without 1% of depression, we'd die. We just would. So in a sense, depression is like a byproduct of living. It's a byproduct of basically, it's a byproduct of trauma. It's a byproduct of just being human. So whenever somebody says depression isn't real, I'm going to tell you here on this live, they are full of BS, because it is real. You know what I mean? And if you're just joining on today in this live, because I'm seeing some people joining right now, you need to watch part 1 to understand part 2. Part 1 was basically the Titanic. I explained why the Titanic is important and why it sunk. Today we're uncovering the mystery of the iceberg, which is the bottom part, is the hidden truth, is the biggest part of the iceberg. And we don't see it and we don't know it exists. That kind of thing. So yeah, so what I said before, psychoanalysis is the theory, but it makes the unconscious conscious. That is psychoanalysis. And if you actually study this bit, which is the unconscious, the biggest part, you'll realize it's to do with like ego and is it super ego, something like that. So it's ego, super ego, and ID. So it's those 3 things. But I've not got too deep into that. I'm just researching on that right now. So there's those 3 things. So why am I explaining this whole thing to you? Why am I explaining this iceberg? You'll find out in part 3. But this part 2 is a lot of information, and whoever's watching the replay, you'll understand that actually it does make sense. It does make sense why most of our mind is actually underneath the sea level, stuff that we can't see, underneath the ocean. And that is where we find our past experiences and our trauma and stuff that are broken up in bits. So one of the ways how people can actually understand the unconscious, the part underneath, is by studying dreams. So it's something called dream analysis. And free association, which basically means speaking in a free way your thoughts and feelings, that kind of thing. Whoever watches the replay or watching it now, this is probably the best video I've ever watched. And funnily enough, not many people join. When not many people join the live, I speak some interesting facts and information. But you know what? Who cares? Who cares how many people we have, and who cares how many people watch? But I'm going to make this into a video soon. This iceberg, mystery of the iceberg, which is all to do with how our minds work, basically. So hope you like this live. Whoever watches the replay, thanks for joining, and do subscribe and like the live. Cheers, guys. See you on the next one. See you on part 3.